And now a little story from the apple seed.
Thank you. So my friend Andy says that we live a goodly life as storytellers, and it is so true because we get to travel, meet people, we're cared for, we're loved by people, and we get to hear stories. And one of my favorite things is to ask people, so what's your story? I do it all the time. So what's your story? And I don't even have to prompt them. They usually have some mile marker in their life that they start from automatically, some emotional dip that just has become their bookmark. Well, I was traveling through Tennessee, and I met a really lovely young man. He was in his late 20s, almost 30. And we sat there talking music because he was an incredible musician. I met him at a songwriter's camp. And I asked him, so what's your story? Tell me your story. And he said, when I was a little boy, he said, my dad played violin. And he was incredible. He said, as a little kid, I even knew that he was insanely good. He said, I would sit at his feet in awe. He was my hero. And he would play every night when he got home from work. He'd pull off his tie, unbutton the top few buttons of his shirt, and then get out his violin and begin to play. And I loved him so much. And he made me fall in love with music. So I began to study music and practice music and enjoy music because I wanted to be like my dad. He said, then I got to be 10 through 12. And I started to ask questions like, so Dad, you're so good. I hear people talk about how good you are. Why don't you go out and play? He said, nah, he said, I'm good. I'm happy here. And he'd wink at me and he'd continue to play. Then I became an older teen. That 15 kind of area. And I started to get irritated because I'd learned by then that my dad had actually turned down opportunities to play with bands that traveled all over the country and beyond. And I would say, Dad, I don't get it. Why would you give that up? You're stuck behind a desk working a 9-to-5 job. I don't even understand it. It's like you're wasting your talent. And my dad would just smile and he'd play his violin. Well, then I got older, 17, and I began to feel really irritated with him. When he played the violin, it would actually grit at me, and it would just irritate me, and I'd get angry. And I started to lose respect for him. And I said things to myself like, well, he may throw away his dream, but I'm not throwing away mine. He may have given up what he wanted to do with his life, but I'm not. I'm never going to be like him. Working a 9-to-5. Well, an offer came, he told me, to travel with a very notable band, but he hadn't graduated yet. And his parents were really upset as he defied them, got an old pickup truck and said, I'm leaving, and there's nothing you can do about it. I graduate in just a month or two. He said, I'm out of here. And he said, I remember seeing my mom with a worn-out tissue in her hand and her head down as I pulled away. And my dad with his arms across his chest and his mouth set firm as he looked down at the ground, red-faced. And I pulled away and thought, I am never looking back. I am not going to be like him. I'm going to go live my dream. And he said, I did. He said, I spent a couple years playing with that band, and everything went well. I said, but what about your relationship with your mom and dad? He said, well, for those years, we barely talked. And when we did, it was just polite phone calls. He said, but all that's changed now. And I said, really? I said, why? He said, well, life changed for me, and I got some insight into my father. And now we're close, and he's forgiven me, and I understand him. And this is the song I wrote for that kid that explains the whole thing. You said Papa was a rolling stone, but that's not the way the story goes. Push being a star far out of sight, working hard to be home to tuck his son in each night. Working the 9-to-5 grind, keeping pictures of his wife and kid in his mind. Don't you know sometimes his toe would go to tapping? Asked if he had regrets, well, you know he would be lying. As he holds his son's hand, he dreams of playing in a band, making music and traveling the road. But those dreams are for the young, his heart's rooted at home. You know there's always a melody left unsung. You know there's always a melody left unsung. Now his little boy thinks he's all grown up. Harsh words in a packed up pickup truck. And as he pushes away, he says, Dad, I was born to fly. And he leaves with an old pawn shop guitar by his side. Now that boy's become a man. Spent a couple years playing in a rock and roll band. And then life threw him a hard curve right. Now he works to be home, to tuck his son in each night. As he holds his son's hand, he dreams of playing in a band, making music and traveling the road. But those dreams are for the young, his heart's rooted at home. You know there's always a melody left unsung. As he holds his son's hand, he dreams of playing in a band, making music and traveling the road. But those dreams are for the young, his heart's rooted at home. You know there's always a melody left unsung. You know there's always a melody left.
Thanks for joining us for a little story from the Appleseed.